All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to NAIFA's 2021 April CE seminar. My name is Camille Tan and I will be your MC for today's program. I serve as NAIFA Illinois' immediate past president and I'm an advisor in the Naperville area with Van Ham and Tan Financial. There's my lovely picture. I want to thank you all for participating today, and I have just a few announcements. First of all, meeting attendees can receive 1 hour of CE credit for today's program. You provided your NPN when you registered, and your participation in the program will be tracked through the Zoom meeting platform. If you have any questions about your CE, please contact Sarah Dequator at our state headquarters. I know we're all familiar with Zoom, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat box, and the speaker will answer them after his presentation as time allows. And for your best visual experience, please adjust your view to speaker view. If you don't know how to do that, please ask the millennial in your office and they'll help you.
A question for those of us who are joining by phone. Is there a way that we can get credit for it if we're not able to be on the Zoom meeting itself? I mean, what is there, like a voice prompted thing with our names or what?
I believe so. I believe Zoom can still track that you logged in, and Sarah will still be able to monitor that phone number. If she has any questions, or maybe reach out to her after the presentation and just verify that your phone number, that she has that intact and can get you your CE.
That's absolutely correct, Camille. Thank you. Just reach out to me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Not a problem. Not a problem. All right. Moving right along. Again, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box. Brian will be able to answer those hopefully at the end of the presentation. And I myself would like to thank you all for joining. I know that we have a mix of members and non-members on our call. Many of you might be aware of NAIFA. Some of you, this is your first presentation. But NAIFA is the Agents Association for the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. We help agents to continually grow their business, increase their knowledge, and enhance their skills. NAIFA is your association for knowledge and content. There's many things that you have access to, especially the last year since COVID. All of it has gone online, but you get a daily Smart Brief update. You get different content that you can use to educate yourself along with your clients. In fact, today alone, I got an article, fits right in with a client with a case that I'm working with that I'm going to forward to them as soon as we're off of the call. You also build camaraderie and relationships with all the various different people. There's so many people on this call that I would never have known outside of NAIFA, but now I have 15 plus years of friendship with so many of them. And you surround yourself with like-minded people who want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed. It's a great way to get knowledge and skill and mentorship from some of the greatest in the industry, to exchange ideas and to learn from people who are doing the same things that you are doing and help you get better at it every day. I'm also a graduate of NAIFA's prestigious Lilly class, which is the Leadership in Life Institute. I graduated in 2013, which seems like a lifetime ago, but that is also one of our greatest benefits as a NAIFA member. For your participation in this class, you focus not only on building a better business, but building a better personal life and a better whole person. Lilly classes are forming now. Illinois is happy to offer an in-person class. We are putting it together. If you are interested in this, feel free to reach out to myself, to Sarah, or any of the other NAIFA Illinois board members. They'd be happy to point you in the right direction. We'd love to fill this class up and get more and more Illinois people through this great program. And if you're not a NAIFA member, I invite you to join the only organization serving and representing the insurance and financial advisors, regardless of the products you sell or the focus of your practice. Joining NAIFA is a personal statement that you adhere to the highest code of ethics in all that you do. You seek continuous improvement through education, and you belong to a network of trusted advisors and actively support advocacy efforts to protect our industry, both at the state and federal level, making sure that the promises that we make to our clients are still promises 20, 30, 40 years down the line, so that we can uphold the legacy of our industry. I invite you to learn more about NAIFA membership. Currently, there are career-friendly membership investment rates. If you've never been a member of the NAIFA family, we have special rates for you too. Those are on the screen. This is a new thing that NAIFA is doing. It's probably new to some of us who have been members for a long time, but we want to make sure you have the chance to experience membership and get involved with your association. Now on with the program. I'm honored to introduce you to our featured speaker and my good friend, Mr. Brian Haney. Brian is most proud to have been recently voted by his daughter to the illustrious title of World's Most Embarrassing Dad. Well, that is his full-time gig. He also masquerades as a certified association executive, which is his la-di-da way of saying he works with associations to help them maximize their growth and support their members. He's a decorated financial industry veteran. Brian has been an MBRT qualifier since 2009, MBRT core of the table since 2014, and top of the table since 2015. He was one of NAIFA's prestigious 4 under 40 in 2017, as well as the diversity champion in 2018. Brian was also named to the Washington Business Journal's 40 under 40 in 2019. He's founder of his firm, The Haney Company, and he is passionate about educating and empowering consumers to achieve financial success. He's a national speaker, an author, podcast host, and mentor. He operates an independent family-owned practice with his father, Alan, and brother, Scott, outside of Washington, D.C. Please, let's give a warm NAIFA Illinois welcome to Mr. Brian Haney.
All right, thanks, Camille. Hey there, NAIFA Nation. Very excited to share something that is one of my areas of passion, and that is helping us as an industry continue to thrive, but to do it in the new landscape and in the new economy. So I'm going to go through this, cover a lot of ground, and probably cover a bunch of data points relatively quickly. So do track with me. Hopefully, for those that like to take notes or listen, please do that. And then collectively, if you have questions along the way, do put them in the chat, because I'm going to try to leave enough time to go through things at the end. So here we are. All right, you've already heard about me. And by the way, being the world's most embarrassing dad, that takes effort, folks, real effort. So I just need you to understand that, you know, if I sound tired, that's probably the biggest reason why. What am I going to walk through? So the entire, I think, crux of really having and developing a digital practice centers on brand value optimization. So I'm going to spend some time on that. We're going to talk about audience-centered engagement and the strategy behind what that is, and B, why that's really important. We're going to talk about how do you become a subject matter expert, even if you already are, or whether you're not and you want to be, what that's all about and why that's important. We're going to go through a lot of LinkedIn tips, because I think probably I would say the majority of us are on LinkedIn in some way, shape, or form. And if you're not, by the end of this presentation, I'm going to encourage you to get on there. And then last, I'm going to talk about ways that you might be able to commoditize things for yourself and generate revenue streams you might not have ever thought of doing. So a whole lot of stuff to cover. But let's get started. As my friend, Captain Obvious, likes to say, for those of us not born yesterday, it's a digital world, and that means that the competition has changed. Think about this, folks. There are 2.8 billion with a B users on Facebook, and that means Facebook is the largest population on Earth, which is a little bit chilling, but pretty significant. 93% of buying decisions today are influenced by social and digital media. Now, this is where I think the rubber meets the proverbial road. Now, this was already true pre-pandemic, and anything that is this significant pre-pandemic has only accelerated. In fact, one of the interesting statistics that I found was 53% of millennials say they would rather lose their sense of smell than lose their technology. Now, I don't know about you, I like to smell things, but that is a remarkable statement. And I'm sure the generations behind them, it may even be more pronounced, right? In this economy, the virtual consumer is the one in the driver's seat. And so that means, you know, how might the average client or prospect go about thinking and engaging with financial services and financial vehicles? Because the reality is, with easy to establish online banking, stock trading, even, you know, clicking here or there to save 15% on whatever insurance you want to get, right? There's a lot of new ways someone can do this. And the reality is, it may be done without working with a professional. So who's our competition? I can tell you this, it's not the people on this call. It's certainly not other financial professionals. If you don't know, buying behavior has completely changed. And it's not Merrill Lynch versus Charles Schwab or State Farm versus Allstate or Mass Mutual versus Northwestern. Now the real question is simple. Do I actually need to work with a professional or not? Think about that for a second. If you're not competing against peers and people in the industry, you're competing against the idea and the notion that maybe somebody's better off just doing things on their own because they can, because it's easy. Now, we don't have to talk about whether or not that's right or good. I think all of us just need to accept that it is. It's also, you're competing against podcasters, content creators, people pushing out tips, tricks, blogs, videos, TikTok. Again, this is where the consuming public is going to get information. Whether the information is helpful or hurtful is not the point. The point is that this is now the landscape that we are all operating in. It is a very saturated place to be. So what do we need to do about that, right? How can you stand out from the crowd and compete against a Fox blogger or somebody that's on CNN Money and runs a website that has, 100,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel? Or, how do you compete against robo platforms and frankly, direct to consumer insurance products, which that whole market and all of the money that's being spent in fintech is not going down. It's not going anywhere. How can you become a viable candidate to help consumers? Well, I'll land that plane real quick for you. The key is you need to have the right brand. Now, all right. Hopefully most of us understand the word brand. I'll kind of frame it a little bit. If I were to say the word Apple or the word Disney or the word Starbucks, all of us understand and know those words, but we probably don't think enough about what they actually mean. Well, yeah, sure. All of us might have, an Apple device somewhere in the vicinity of our person. We might even be on one right now, right? Especially everybody that has a child under the age of 12, I'm sure you've been to Disney somewhere, or you're subscribing to Disney Plus, et cetera. And yes, Starbucks is probably the coffee king of the world. Now, they're not built on the best coffee. I think most people would agree that, in fact, it's probably not the best coffee. But all of those are brands that have been built around not the products that they serve, but the experiences that they create. So they're more than just a logo, right? So I'm taking time on this concept because I think it's really important for us as professionals to understand what this means, right? Your brand really is not just what do you do, it's who you do it for, but most importantly, it's why do you do what you do? And I think that gets missed very often, even though a lot of times we'll hear speakers talk about, what is your why? But our problem isn't necessarily knowing it. It's communicating that effectively in the public arena, in the digital space. It's not that you can say it when you're talking to somebody. It's can potential clients and prospects find out what your why is before you even reach them, before you even connect. Because we all know people do not buy our stuff, they buy us. Doesn't matter the name of the company that shows up on my statement month over month. I don't care if it's Fidelity, Mass Mutual, doesn't matter. It matters that I bought it from Camille or John Wheeler. That name matters more than the other portion. So if we know that that's why people are working with us, it's because that we as practitioners are doing something unique and significant. How do we really, though, create that kind of a dynamic in a virtual space where it's very hard to stand out, where you're going to get drowned out. And there are a lot of people that might look and sound like you. Am I hitting home for anybody? I hope so. So let's think about brand for a second. All right, there's a lot of things that come together with brand. And really, I think this is the area where the key missing ingredient I find most people make, not just in our industry, across a lot of industries, is that there's a complete lack of continuity in our brand and our messaging. So we look and sound and act differently, and we're creating unintentionally something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance happens when simply there's a disconnect. You're saying one thing, but then visually it's a little bit different. And then I find you online and your virtual kind of profile looks something entirely different. And all of a sudden, in the back of somebody's mind, not necessarily consciously, but subconsciously, it's like, I don't understand, or there's a question, or there's a hesitancy. And we're building mental barriers to people wanting to work with us without even realizing it. So continuity is the one thing that again, from the word brand, I need to develop it, and the word continuity. My brand has to be uniform. So I have to think about things like a logo, my bio. Here's a good question. Who wrote your bio? I think the answer is we all did. Every single one of us. I wrote my bio. Here's what I would suggest. What might your bio look like if your clients wrote it? All right. Hopefully, many of you may be connected with me on LinkedIn. After this, please, I encourage you to go ahead and at least find me on LinkedIn and read my LinkedIn bio, because I guarantee you it sounds a lot different than probably yours might. And there's a reason for it, because as a great example, when we communicate based off of our own paradigm, right? We're going to use a Lilly concept. When we speak out of our own paradigm and framework, what we think people want to hear, that's fine. But how do we know that is exactly what they want to hear? And frankly, how do we know that that even matters? So shift out of thinking about what you want to sound like and actually get better connected to what is your audience trying to find, what do they want to hear, what they want to know, and what do they want to hear you say about yourself? And more importantly, how can you stand out from all these bios of people that are, I'm not the only top of the table MDRT member out there in the world, right? Those are not reasons for people to want to connect to me. So we need to talk differently. We need to stand differently. We need to be a different type of digital persona and presence. And again, it needs to be the same. So logo, bio, social media. Here's one, print material. A lot of us might run independent practices where we work with a variety of carriers, right? So we're not captive. We can pull anybody off the shelf, and we do that on a regular basis. And I'm sure we're all connected to wholesalers that are wanting to push their stuff as well. And they got a lot of great materials. That's all well and good, but you need to take extra thought into the materials that you're using, because Principal might have some great stuff that looks and sounds good, but does it sound like you? Does it enhance your brand, or does it take away from it? Is, Jackson's stuff exactly the way that you want to communicate? It's not to suggest that you don't end up using multiple parties' materials, but you really have to consider how they flow and what kind of an imprint you put on whatever you're doing with somebody, instead of just trying to stand other parties up to speak for you. You might find that it actually causes more confusion than it helps. So think about all these things. Your voicemail. Feel free to give me a call on my cell phone. I won't answer, since if you're not a contact, I tend to not answer, and you can hear my voicemail. Nobody ever really thinks that we can have a nice little contact feel good piece by just having kind of a different voicemail. And hey, this is John Wheeler. You've reached me. Please don't leave any trade orders. Thank you. Stand out. We leave messages all the time. Why not have a little bit of fun? Why not be somebody that somebody actually wants to leave a voicemail on, because you're fun, and carry it all the way through, attire, colors, etc. Okay. So all of these things need to converge when you're really considering your brand. And yeah, as you can tell, we go all the way down to the socks, folks. All right. So how Googleable are you is not really the question. I think the first thing that I want us to now think about is in a digital world, what do you think your prospects are actually doing online, especially as it relates to our stuff? So, you know, you can start by asking some of your clients if they've ever searched for financial things online, what they've done. But before you even do that, in general, what do you think somebody does to go online to seek help financially? What are they really, really looking for? You know, the easy answer is, well, they're probably trying to find information, right? And yes, but the problem is, and we all understand this, right? In you know, Googleverse, there's too much information. And most of that becomes a barrier in and of itself, because the reality is we're not looking for more information. It's not a lack of information that's preventing us from doing what we want to do financially. We can get whatever we want in 2 seconds or less. We can get stuff delivered to our front door that wasn't even possible 10 years ago, right? The issue is not access and it's not information. What are we looking for? We're looking for advice on how to distill that information down and make effective decisions for ourselves. How do we go through all of this stuff and say, all right, what's the most germane and important thing that I need to know and understand, so that way I can make this decision, so I can get this policy, so that I can invest the right way, et cetera, right? I don't need to know how all of the experts are saying this. I need to know how to take that stuff and apply it to my situation. So people are looking for an expert that can give them advice and help them execute. Did you get those 3 things? Expert, advice, and execution. That's what people need. And people need you. That's where the rubber needs to meet the proverbial road in the digital space. So I hope that's exciting to you, because you really have a good sense of how that brand interaction can start to unfold and the types of conversations you want to be able to try to have, not just in person, but online. If it centers on allowing you to be the expert that you are, that's ready to help people with good strategic advice on how they can go about figuring things out for themselves, with the goal of helping them move that needle, you should be in good shape. Now, what's the digital currency all about? What is experience all about? We are living, I mentioned earlier, right? The virtual consumer is in the driver's seat. Everything about marketing and sales now is about hyper customization to meet you individually as a person, to give you what you want, when you want it, the way you want it. So it's all of this very me-centric approach. So how do you find ways to effectively connect in that type of a targeted environment? Well, the thing is, it's not just about who we are and the persona that we're building. It's about how can people start to experience us before they even buy from us, right? We need to give someone a digital experience. So but you might be sitting here saying, well, what does that even mean? Well, for those of you that might have seen Dennis Mosley Williams, this is one of my favorite quotes that I think really quantifies what we need to be doing and acting on as professionals as we're transforming what we do. Service is about saving customers time and money and making life easier. Experience is about creating engagement, which is time well spent and a desire within the client to linger. Now think about that. Do we really, obviously all of us need to be really good at service, but service alone is not going to get more people, nor will it keep people, because kind of now service is kind of the bottom line barrier of entry. It's experience. You know, it's the difference between going to Chick-fil-A and going to a really great restaurant. If you go to a really great restaurant, or if you have a really great vacation, most people that I know aren't quiet about that and keep that to themselves. If anything, they post about it, they tell their friends, oh, you got to go check this out. It was amazing, right? That's an experience. So how can people experience you? How can people experience your practice? What is it like to be onboarded, to become a client? How do you hold someone's hand through difficult times? How do you help people actually walk through and achieve the things that they're trying to achieve? And how is that more unique than somebody just going online and doing something through a robo-advisor? You've got to find a way now to have that type of an experience once somebody's a client, but also to allow people to start to connect with an experience before they become your client. And that's the shift in marketing. So, you know, I was doing a very similar presentation about a month ago for another chapter in Colorado. And one of the great questions that I was asked was, you know, because we're going to get into tactics about, you know, developing sales and marketing online. And somebody said, you know, well, how does all of this kind of marketing stuff compare to the good old tried and true 10-3-1 Granum method of making calls and all that kind of stuff? And so I'm going to make sure that I answer that in total. But I think the one big difference I want to start off pointing out is that inbound marketing is about doing enough right things in a digital space that attracts people, that prepares people for what we are going to try to do, that prepares somebody in a very favorable way. So that way, when we're sitting down and having that initial consultation, which might now obviously be over Zoom these days, that we've kind of already, you know, moved the needle in this particular individual's life enough that it's much, much easier for them to want to say yes. We're kind of almost preparing them for that. That's a marketing tactic that I think is measurably different than a lot of the other ones that we've done up to this point, right? How can we earn people's trust instead of buying it, instead of trying to tell people they need something, right? And convince them that they must take action or press a certain hot button, etc. How can we get them to come to us, right, rather than having to proactively go out and find them and fish and throw out our line and hope we cast the right net and get enough in that it continues to work. Inbound marketing is about meeting your audience where they are. I think one of the key things that we need that you'll need to have to be successful at this is you need to have a very well-developed buyer persona of the person that you think is your ideal client. Now, a lot of us might have this at a rudimentary level in terms of basic demographics, you know, men and women potentially married between the ages of X and Y in these general industries, making this kind of amount of money with potential dependents, et cetera. That's all great. And obviously we all need that, but you need to take that a lot further. In this era of metadata, you need to get real granular. You know, what are the people that you think you're going to be the best resource or going to be the best client for you? First of all, where are they online? What are they doing? Who are they connected to? What are they listening to? Right? What podcasts do they subscribe to? Where do they go to get their information? Who are their friends? Who are the people that are influential? Who do they follow? Right? These are the types of additional data points that are going to be really helpful because, you know, obviously the digital world's a pretty big world. You got to find a way to just get to the right places and not take this gigantic buckshot approach that says, if I just post enough times on LinkedIn, or if I just use Hearsay Social to automatically show that I've got a lot of activity, that should do enough to kind of get people to come to me. I would disagree. I think you need to be a far more strategic, right? So we need to be able to get that buyer persona down to say, this is my ideal client and this is my ideal client in the digital space. So that way I can go figure out how to connect. I can be a part of those groups, part of those communities. I can be connecting and potentially trying to, you know, produce content that lines up with the places that they're going to find content. Now, I already mentioned people are looking for subject matter experts. Now, you might sit here and say to me, okay, Brian, but I don't know. I don't have as many, you know, designations or this or that, or I don't know that I've ever really felt like I'm a subject matter expert in any kind of way. So what should I do? Well, the good news is that just by the fact that you're a professional in this space makes you more of an expert than the average consumer. So bottom line is you should be an expert, even if you don't have 28 designations because what are you an expert at? You're an expert at helping people make the decisions that they want to make, but they just don't know how to, right? So have enough confidence that you are that expert, but now you really need to build that out and allow people to see that. So what do experts look like online, right? If I went to go find an expert plumber, what might I find? Well, a lot of it has to do with the content that you produce. Actually, all of it has to do with the content that you produce, right? So can you provide and put out any good, can you, write a book, write a short book, write an ebook, write articles, have articles that, you've put out in a variety of channels and places. Can you produce a podcast or a video? I know when I start to get into some of this, there's a lot of people out there that the compliance bells start going off. We could talk about that at the end because there's definitely ways for you to have content in these spaces that are compliance friendly. I have a podcast, I've done videos, I've written a book, I've done all these things. And yes, I had to submit all of those things through compliance. So I need everybody to hear me say this. You can do this and don't let compliance scare you away from doing it. But you just got to find the right way to do it. But what kind of resources can you put out that people can find and that say, oh, wow, Sarah put this out. This is really good. This was really helpful. Or, I love listening to that show. It's really great. It always, it gets me more interested in finance or insurance or, the non-narcotic cure for insomnia, AKA insurance. Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool to have a podcast that people wanted to listen to on a topic that people don't care about, right? How can we do that? Videos, by the way, 1/3 of time spent online is watching videos. So video is probably one of the most underutilized mediums by our industry. Definitely a lot of ways that we can do videos and do them very well. So finding ways to have good, helpful content that doesn't tell, you don't need to tell everybody this is what you need to do. You need to give somebody just enough of a nugget to say, oh, wow, I didn't know that about X. I now have more questions, and I now need to connect with so-and-so that helped me take that additional step forward, right? What does effective content look like? Okay, it's ultra specific, it's of free. So, hey, check out this white paper on, 162 bonuses. Click here for more information. It's something that if I'm going out into the digital space is going to help me solve an obvious problem. So it's not super generic. It's not just, hey, I'm going to write a fun article about, economics and politics and what's going on. Because while that's good stuff, that's not really going to help you stand out. So a lot of times when people say, I like to put out a lot of economic commentary or kind of generalized stuff, I'm not suggesting that you can't have that be a part of your content strategy, but a lot of that stuff doesn't hook people in more. And in some respects, it might drive people away because when they see that you're not kind of giving something that's really specific, then they're not going to see your content as helpful. And then therefore, by default, they won't see you as helpful. So being too generic actually can undermine your brand somewhat considerably. Does it provide immediate gratification, right? Did we click here and download something and look at it and say, wow, that was helpful? Is it easy to consume, right? Not every video should be an hour. In fact, the average, I believe LinkedIn caps the amount of video time to about 8 or 9 minutes. Most videos can be really short, 2, 3, 5 minutes long. So you don't have to actually cover a whole lot to be effective. Does it have a high perceived value in the mind of your target audience? That's critical, because if it's just fluff or if it's not really hitting the right point and communicating based on how your audience might want you to be communicating with them, it's not going to draw people in. And it needs to shift the relationship ultimately back to you, meaning you got to find out more. You got to contact me to get, if you really do need help, this is the next step that you have to take. Now, more, how can you do content? Because you might say, well, Brian, I don't know. I don't have that much time in the day to be writing articles or doing all this other stuff. Okay, that's fine. And that may be very true. there's a couple easy ways where you don't have to necessarily find 20 more hours out of the day to become a social media savant, if you will. So here's a couple ways that I think most of us can do this. And partnership is the number one strategy I would suggest and recommend across the board, because all of us have what? Centers of influence and people that we work with. And even if we don't, this might be an opportunity, a way to go about developing some of those relationships. It's nowadays, every potential, whether it's an attorney, an accountant, a business banker, you name it, there's so many people out there. All of us are trying to do better in the digital space. And so it's an opportunity to say, hey, what are you doing to try to market yourself in this area? What can we work on together, right? So leverage your partners. If you've got really good COIs, maybe find somebody that already has a show. A ton of people are putting out content. Figure out who you already know that's doing it and see if you can become a guest on somebody's show. I've been a routine guest on a lot of people's shows, which is great for me because then I'm getting in front of an audience that's not mine. I'm really leveraging somebody else's stuff, but I'm also obviously getting the benefit of all of that. So I might, certainly get audience members from that. But even if I don't really penetrate that market just because I happen to be a guest on somebody else's podcast, I'm definitely elevating my brand value and expertise because I'm that guest, right? Oh, as seen on, fill in the blank. When you see that by a lot of people's, names, that's, as seen on CNN. Well, how does somebody get to CNN level? Well, it's not as hard as we think, but you do things like this, right? You become known as somebody who can have a great conversation, can be a good guest speaker, or just have a brief interview that can be really valuable as long as it lines up with somebody's audience, right? If you're trying to develop your own show, invite people to be interviewed. So that's the other reverse of that, is that if you're trying to produce your own content, a great way to bring people in and develop brand ambassadors is to have them be guests on your show and participate in your stuff and vice versa, right? Co-author, you can co-author white papers with people. I do that relatively frequently. And, there's a lot of ways to kind of, many hands can make light work in that area. But I think the key is, develop really good relationships and do things in collaboration. Don't feel like you have to do it all yourself, because frankly, most of us probably don't feel confident about doing production. So you're going to need to get help and you need to find resources to do that. Now, SEO. What is SEO? Search engine optimization. It's the way that people in the digital space find stuff. So whatever we produce, we have to be mindful as to how we deploy it, right? If we built the content out and now we're putting it in our arsenal and we're putting it out there, what do we need to do to make sure that it lands the most effectively and is that inbound marketing end game where people are now drawn to us? So quality matters. We already talked about that. Great, FAQs are great resources and really easy to produce. And by the way, very compliance friendly. So if you like just kind of having, here's kind of a 10 or 11 FAQ style resource, that might be a good place to start. Make sure you get backlinks, because that's one of the big ways that you get greater visibility, and also it's more Google friendly for you. So that's really important. Don't forget about that, especially if you're on other people's stuff or people are starting to promote you. It's really important that you get that nailed down. And I think it's also good for you to start to understand how Google works yourself. So here's a great exercise. Start to type in a question you think your target audience might be asking into the Google search bar, but do it slowly and look at how Google pre-fills the rest of it, because that'll tell you exactly how Google is going to read and register things. And it might also answer certain things that you might say, oh, well, what's a good kind of title question for a blog post, or what can I throw into this article on LinkedIn that I'm sharing, right? If you understand how the searcher intent works, how the keywords work, and what types of questions people are already asking, then you're just writing content that fits that metrics really, really effectively. It's actually not as hard as we think, but most of us probably just have never taken the time to try to figure those types of very granular things out. So hopefully that is helpful. All right. Now, I think a lot of us are usually going to perk up. How do we win on LinkedIn? Like I said, I hope most of us are on LinkedIn. So if you're not, here's my plug, get on LinkedIn. They don't pay me to say that. It's all right. So I kind of want to, I've written a couple articles on this. So if you're interested in finding them, I actually did one for the NAIFA blog very recently. Let's go through kind of the things we really do need to do and things that I hope you don't do or you can stay away from. So we'll start with the negative first, and then we'll end with the positive, right? Be very careful about auto-generated anything, because for many reasons. Number one, people know when things are not thought out. If it's an auto-generated response that anybody can do and you're doing that, they know that that's what it is. So just recognize that how we communicate when we're doing things that are thoughtless lands that way to the person that we're doing it for, right? So if I'm from a connection request to a response, all those stuff, just be really careful of anything that's automatically generated, because the question is that the kind of communication that you want that represents your brand the best? Do you want somebody to think that you don't think too much when you respond or when you communicate? I also caution people to be careful of kind of automatic posting services. There's a ton of them out there, from Hearsay Social to the stuff in the FMG suites, marketing, a bunch of kind of social media content vehicles that are designed to be very, very friendly for us as practitioners, compliance friendly, and can create kind of a set it and forget it opportunity. Well, there's two main problems with that. Number one is that, by the way, those same programs are used by a variety of people already in our industry. So it's not uncommon for that same automatic post to show up in a lot of people's feeds. And just imagine, right, if you're trying to stand out and yet you and the next 10 people that use Hearsay Social all posted the same thing, your target audience is going to see that and know real quick that really wasn't you. It's really not from you. You're really not putting a lot of thought into the content that you're putting out there. It can do a lot to really hurt you. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use those services. It just might mean that you're going to have to personalize some of those things a little bit more effectively. You need to put your own imprint, your fingerprints on what you're putting out there. Also, having 5 million connections might sound great, but in reality, that's not what's great for you. Having connections that are meaningful to either advance your business, advance your brand, or that are legitimate clients or prospects, those are really the only ones that you want. The other ones are not going to be helpful or beneficial because, like we said, it's not about this giant broad brush buckshot approach where if I spray, wide enough, far enough, hopefully it'll land with the right people and they'll come to me. No, you really just need to be laser focused on the people that are going to potentially give you maximum value. So for me, that's how I break it down. Friends, people that are relationships, centers of influence, partners, people that'll be brand ambassadors that are connected to me and might share my stuff or talk favorably about me, and prospects and clients. That's really what I need to build out and be very, very mindful of. So I think that some of us might need to go in and look through our existing connections and also be really mindful of the connections requests that we accept moving forward. And please, please, please don't be a yucky salesperson. Just don't. Obviously, none of us are trying to actively do that, but if we're not putting a lot of thought, energy, or an effort to our outreach, or if we're just kind of automatically taking these, hey, here's the tips and tricks for how you can do LinkedIn sales and get a bunch of connections and then send them this script because this is the script that works on LinkedIn. It doesn't. I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff out there. People have bought into that. I don't believe very much in a lot of those systems because it's not a script. Frankly, is somebody going to want to work with you because you had the right script? I hope not. I hope there's a bigger, better, and more strategic reason why somebody would work for you. So now what should we do? Obviously, I've already said the contrary. So let's connect with people for genuine, legitimate, and meaningful ways. So as you're building, relationships in the LinkedIn space, take an interest before you ask somebody to connect. Get to know them. Do, a little due diligence. Say, when it says, do you want to add a note? Say, yeah, hey, wow, I saw the post that you did on fill in the blank, thought that was interesting, and I'm just wanted to reach out and connect. Love to get to know you virtually, right? Doesn't take that much more time, but it certainly stands out. It's meaningful, and hopefully it comes from you. It comes from your heart. It's not just, hey, I want to connect. Here's my auto-generated response that tells you how interested I am. And then use the opportunity, use this digital space wisely, right? We can figure out a lot about people. There's tons of data out there. So especially, you know, to be as armed as possible when you're going out prospecting, get to know people virtually, right? Don't just make a connection and automatically send them that next reach out. Hey, this is what I do. And that's kind of why I connected with you to begin with, because I wanted to hit you up for business right away, right? Take some time to actually form some kind of a virtual relationship first, where it's not just somebody doesn't feel like you just reached out and added, you know, the only reason why you reached out is because you wanted to add them to your sales funnel. So be considerate, be authentic, be yourself. Magnify you, magnify your brand. Other tactics. LinkedIn, by the way, has a great resource. So, you know, email me at the end of this and I'll send it to you. First thing you want to take a look, they got a great resource that'll tell you your percentage of kind of your statistical percentage of your profile in your industry, how high you rank up versus how far down you are. So it'll literally tell you how good your profile is or isn't. But you need to have good bio, you need to have a really good profile, you need to have a better than, you know, average professional picture. And by the way, the pictures that we use, I can't tell you how many times, how old are you in the picture that you're in, and compared to how old you are now. So think about that. It doesn't have to be, you know, like a high school centered photo. In fact, there's a lot of data that says it shouldn't be that way, because you will stand out more effectively. All of us have that kind of professional, you know, I can see it right now in half of everybody's pictures that we have when we turn our videos off on Zoom. But, you know, if you want to start to stand out, if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see my picture looks very different. I'm not even looking at my audience. I'm kind of looking off into the distance, right? It almost has that psychological response of, I wonder what he's looking at. Whatever it is, find a really good way to use all of these little points to your advantage, because those are the little tips and tricks that actually have a significant impact. Also, let people know what you stand for, right? We all are not just in business for business, but we are, you know, values-driven individuals, and being able to let people know what you value is actually very important. It's a great way for people to connect with you beyond what you do professionally, and it's also a great way to attract people to you as a practitioner because you have a good shared value. So find an effective way to do that. Tap into fear of missing out, right? In the way that I approach some of the things that I post, I'll have, you know, number one thing you got to learn if you're in this, or if you don't learn this, bad things could happen. Now, not necessarily obviously that verbiage, but creating a level of urgency that really, you know, drives people to want to at least consume the content more effectively, rather than, hey, I saw this article, thought it was great. There's no urgency there. So unless I actually see the title of the article and think that it is great, I'm not going to spend some time viewing it, right? You have to be engaged. Online, people need to see you interacting. So whatever platforms you're on, comment, like, post, participate, share other people's stuff, be engaged. People will not come to you if you do not give them a reason to. And the best way to give them a reason to is to show them that you are active online. And post a variety of stuff. Don't just stick to one thing unless, you know, you're literally just, I'm just this person, or I'm a specialist in this. But having a variety allows people to kind of see, they'll see you as a subject matter expert already, but variety is what brings more people in to say, oh, he's more than just the guy that's always posting about X, Y, and Z. I already mentioned leverage videos because they're so powerful. All right, last piece, and then hopefully I've got plenty of time for questions. Now, really high level practices have figured this out, but I think that they're few and far between. But in this type of digital economy where, you know, I'm sure if I took a poll of everybody participating on this and I said, how many of you have, you know, 2 to 4 subscription services that you spend money on every single month, I would have to imagine the majority of us would raise our hands, right? So subscription buying behavior obviously is, everybody's kind of doing that. Now, what does that mean? How does that matter for us? Well, I know one thing, and this is something that our practice has really tried to be mindful of, is we all do a lot of things that we don't always get paid for. What do we get paid for? To manage assets, to place insurance, right? To do benefits, et cetera. When we deliver the product solutions, and then obviously we can charge fees. Now, this isn't just about kind of saying, well, you know, try to find ways to just charge more fees on a fee basis. What are some of the other things that you might spend time on that are incorporated with you delivering services and solutions that frankly have value in and of themselves? So that's what this is about. What processes can you turn into a product? So, you know, we actually will do insurance audits and we charge for them. So whether somebody becomes a client or not, they can come to us in you know, our target markets and say, hey, this is what we have from an insurance standpoint. Will you just take a look and give us, you know, a professional opinion and evaluate what we've got? Yes, we will do that, but we don't do that for free, right? What products can you turn into a program? We're all now doing education. We're doing education right now. Why not develop your own educational series programs, create a little bit of a library that then somebody has to pay to get access to, right? What kind of services could you package together and charge a fee for? You know, when you really just step away and actually look at, these are all the things that we do. Not all of those things make money for you now, but maybe some of them could be brought together and could become a fee source or a fee opportunity. Or maybe somebody would be willing to sign up for a subscription for a nominal monthly amount. And these are the things you will do for that nominal monthly amount, whether they buy stuff from you or not. You might be surprised that you can actually create a lot more opportunities to connect with your audience that don't all have to flow through our major deliverables. Now, that's not to suggest that all of a sudden you're going to see all these, you know, fee revenue streams, just you know, the floodgates are going to open, but it is to let you know that because people are obviously willing to do this, that the entire consuming public is moving in this direction. If we're not finding an effective way to tap into that, we're missing something, right? Because we do so much for free and we got to stop. So find opportunities. I think there's a ton of opportunities in commoditization, and that's just delivering other things that you charge for. All right. Man, I covered a lot of ground. I hopefully am leaving a little bit of time for some Q&A and interaction. And by the way, I'm happy to help any of you if you want to get coached on how to do this whole brand thing from soup to nuts. But let's open it up for some Q&A. Questions, comments, concerns, needs, desires, longings, or considerations.
Please feel free. If you guys want to ask a question, pop it in the chat box. We do have about 5 minutes for questions. Brian covered a whole lot of content in there on some different social media platforms and different content generating ideas. So don't be shy. I know NAIFA Illinois never is, so feel free to ask away. There we go.
How can you collaborate for a white paper? Great question. I mean, usually I take a direct approach. And I think that, so, you know, a couple examples. Let's say I have, you know, an estate planning attorney. You know, I might just reach out and say, hey, you know, I would love to put together a piece specific to, you know, I don't know, fill in the blank, this type of strategy for business owners. You know, I know that you're really good at this. You know, do you have some time? Could we just kind of, you know, put our heads together and see if we can come up with a brief white paper where we're both putting some information pieces together, and then we co-sponsor it, we kind of co-brand it, and then we use it, you know, to market to our audiences. I mean, again, if you think of everybody that you already work with in some capacity as a strategic partner or center of influence or any referral source, you know, I think it's just, it might be as simple as asking them, hey, are you trying to produce any content, or would you be interested and open to doing this? And, you know, if you got 10 people and you get 3 of them to say yes, great. I mean, that's a huge win. because you might be surprised, not as many other types of white collar professionals we're kind of all in the same boat. It's not as easy to produce content, not all of us are necessarily wired that way. So sometimes the nudge to help and know that they're not going to have to do it all themselves, the two of you can work together, that's enough to actually move the needle. Does that help? Hopefully that answered that question. Let's see. Let me see. The next was, is coaching for a specific amount of time or for appointments or ongoing? David, I'm not entirely sure I know the context to best answer that question. So if you want to give me a little bit more details onto what coaching you mean. I'm going to go to Joe Bailey, who said, when you post a variety of content, do you mean to create content that it isn't based on your profession? No, I think it's just, it's topical. So, I'll use life insurance as an example. There's a lot of things that we can talk about life insurance, right? So obviously there's a lot of different types of life insurance. So even for something as narrowly defined as a particular financial product, I can find a lot of different ways to talk about it, post about it, engage about it, right? And so that's kind of the mentality that you want to have. You start with what are the things that are, the most significant for your practice. So I don't, we have a full suite practice. So we naturally have to cover a lot of grounds because we do everything from P&C to benefits to retirement plans to, so we kind of have that, but not everybody's built that way. So I think I always encourage anybody to start with the things that you like the most or that you're the best at. And then just think of, frankly, an easy place to start might be what are the most common objectives that you get, and how can you kind of create a little framework or a story or a Q&A about, when somebody says annuities are the devil. Okay, all right. Well, here's a nice little fun article unpacking why annuities are not the devil, right? Whatever it is, why buying term and investing the difference isn't a great strategy. So I think that's what I mean by variety. And yes, if you feel comfortable and confident of going beyond your industry or kind of, that's certainly encouraged if you think that that's something that's going to land well with your audience. So the answer should always be, what does your audience want you to do? Or what would they really find valuable that's going to lead them back to you, not away from you? But again, I think that, we can probably really all stick with the things that we're really connected to and just have these types of different conversations that are really meeting the people that we're trying to do business with in those different places, right? Somebody read a blog and said, whole life insurance is the worst investment ever. Okay, well, great. I'm going to put something out there that's going to kind of unpack that in a meaningful way, not in a poking the bear way. Okay, well, that's interesting. I never know about that. Thanks for helping me see the opposite part of that equation, right? Stuff like that. DBA and logo, but I need help bringing it all together as you suggest. Yeah, yes. So yes, I can help. The coaching is really designed to help you look at that. And we start by stepping away and saying, all right, let's see what you have and how connected it is. And then really it's mostly an exercise of actually asking questions that even if you have a brand or a logo, et cetera, it might, based on how you answer those types of questions, some of that or all of that might change in a substantive way. But I think it's, when we begin with our brand, when we really think about who we are as professionals and as people and as value-centered individuals, a lot of our stuff changes. Like we have the Bulldog logo, and I'll use this as my kind of parting story to that, is a lot of people ask about that. Like, what the heck's that all about? First of all, what do Bulldogs have to do with financial services? Nothing. Okay. However, Bulldogs are the #1 mascot in America. So a lot of connections from people like that. And as we were going through this exercise of, actually thinking about our personalities and, we like to have fun. We're kind of, I don't want to say abrasive, but, we're a lot of that stuff. We're like, oh, well, Bulldogs are kind of like that, right? So wouldn't it be really cool to actually go all in on a mascot that, we could then point to and say, it's kind of like us. And anyway, that, it was a creative process that led us to going all in on a mascot, and it actually works really well. But that's not to suggest that all of us have to go and, find a furry animal mascot, but it's just, it's a pretty fun process to be able to actually try to see yourself a little bit differently. And I think emphasize things about you as a person that you don't always do a good job of emphasizing in a professional arena. Because at the end of the day, like I said, people are buying us. They're not buying whole life insurance or term or our investment strategies. They are buying us. And so we need to be the best version of us. And that's where, especially, I don't mean to beleaguer this point, but especially those of us that work for corporate brands, right? Like a Mass Mutual, Northwestern, where you have a company that brands itself, but they don't brand you. How do you find an effective way to take a national brand and actually then channel things into a person, into yourself, so that way you can still stand apart, not just stand up as, I work for Mass Mutual. That's great, but I still want to work with Camille or John Wheeler, so that's key. I think that's all the questions, and I think I just blew through my 5 minutes, Camille, so I'm sorry.
Not a problem, Brian. Your content is always so on point, and getting to know Brian, that's one thing I've learned is he's ahead of the curve on some of this stuff that we've all been catching up to this past year. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. I want to remind everybody that our meeting attendees do get 1 hour of CE credit. You did provide your NPN when you registered, and the participation has been tracked through Zoom. If you have any questions, reach out to Sarah and she can answer them about your CE credits. And then I'd just like to take a quick second to thank you all for attending our little lunch and learn here for your 1 hour CE and a little extra knowledge from Brian. And our future upcoming events, if you're interested, we do have next week, April 26th and 27th, a couple hours each day, the Insurance Industry Virtual Legislative Day specific to Illinois. This is all that's going on in Springfield, Illinois, that pertains to you and your business. And then in May, we have the NAIFA National Congressional Conference, also virtual, and that will be your federal updates and anything that's going on in Brian's backyard that will affect our industry as well. I'm also incredibly excited to announce that in June, we will be hosting a NAIFA Illinois golf outing in Peoria, Illinois, just ahead of our summer conference, which will also be at the Holiday Inn and Suites in Peoria. So crossing our fingers that we continue on this trajectory, we will be able to see some of you face to face and elbow to elbow, if you will. And that will be this summer, June 23rd and 24th. And then the other events coming up will also be filtered out and sent to you to update through NAIFA and through all of our NAIFA Illinois information. So thank you so much for participating today. We really look forward to reaching out to some of you and getting to know you better. If you have any questions for Brian, please feel free to reach out to him. If you don't know how to get a hold of him, reach out to me or Sarah, and we can put you in touch with Brian. Again, thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for your membership. And hopefully we'll get some you to join our membership drive as well, and we'll get some new faces.